friend of mine recently texted me saying, I'm going on a retreat for a month because I need clarity. I honestly think he's lying to himself, and it's kind of total bullshit. You're not going to get more information from thinking. Let me explain. I have been in a whirlwind of twists and turns, and as a young guy trying to figure out what the hell his career looks like, I think I've met a fair few other people who are in a similar position. Like, what the fuck do I do? Particularly if you're exploring anything in the realm of entrepreneurship, because, maybe you don't want to do a traditional career, but what the hell does a great job really look like when you define what you want to do? And I've spoken to a fair few guys now that are pretty confused about this. I'm going to explain why I think like getting clarity is not that complicated. It just comes down to two things. Number one, what do you want? Number two, take action to go and get it. And basically, action gives you more information. Taking a step back and going on a retreat or something is not going to give you more information. That is only useful when you have too much information that you need to sort through. Other than taking action, the only information you really need to have is what do you want? Now, I will say that is not necessarily an easy thing to have for certain. In fact, I think one of the things that a lot of people struggle with is being very decisive about what they in fact want, especially when you have a lot of freedom, because it's great to have a lot of freedom. Then you now have to have a good understanding of what your desires are. But when you're not 100% clear on your desires, then you get confused. And I know what that's like. Some other friends of mine are in this position too. And so I'm going to share a little bit about kind of like how I have tried to go about figuring out the things that I want. And then a little bit about okay, what do you do after that? And so to start with that, figuring out what you want, in my opinion, comes down to how do you maximize your own self-respect. I think a good life comes down to what is the life where you look at yourself and you respect yourself the most. I think most people know intuitively what that is, or at least in some vague dimension. If I cheat people, I will not respect myself. If I sell stuff that I genuinely don't believe in, I'm going to lose self-respect for that. If I'm completely honest, is there a lot of money to be made in shilling crappy products and things like that? Yeah, there is a lot of money to be made. Am I going to lose my self-respect for that? I think a little bit. And so I think I'd rather just not go toward that, because I don't want to build a life in which I lose my own self-respect. That is the only thing that we die with. If there's one thing that I've noticed about the people who I admire and respect the most, the people who they walk in a room and they carry a certain weight with their presence. There are a handful of people that I'm really thinking of here, but you meet them, you talk to them, you watch how they interact, and there's a certain steady-handedness, a certain sureness that they have in themselves and everything that they do, which is something that I think I really look up to. What I've noticed is that comes from a lot of just self-respect in what they want, right? And so they don't question themselves. They know that they are not going to betray themselves because they know what they care about and they know what they don't. And there are some people who will look you in the eye and tell you they don't give a shit about cheating other people for their money or whatever. And they have self-respect for that. And that's not something that I want, but they know their lines and they don't cross them. They're fine. Gambling, that's completely, they're completely okay with that. They're not fine with anything to do with drugs. And so they just know their lines very, very well. That's really what I think ultimately you want to find. And then play within those bounds. What do these people really build for themselves? If I think about what are the things I respect the most, it's usually when you don't listen to the noise. You don't really give a shit about what other people want. You know what you want. And I think right now, what I if I'm perfectly honest, my priorities are pretty financial in terms of I think you can't pour from empty buckets. And one of the reflections that I also had in San Francisco is, as much as an impact company seems really cool, the reality is you can make a hell of a lot of impact by just making a lot of money and using that money for good. And so if I know that I have certain financial needs that I want to meet, just in terms of me being able to provide for myself, my family, whatever, that's a big priority. I also would like to do good in the world, and I can do good by making a lot of money and using that money for good. Okay, so basically I have a very large financial oriented kind of goal right now. And then that's essentially my entire priority, and all of my energy is going to go to that. And then within that, I think the other balance that I've started to realize, I want to play to my strengths, and I think that's the most efficient way to play. And I don't want to chase hype for the sake of hype. When I'm doing something because other people say that it's cool and because there's certain status associated with it, I'm doing it for the wrong reasons. And those are reasons I don't respect. In fact, one of the people who honestly, he's been a personal friend of mine, but I think I've lost some respect for him over the years. He does things almost exclusively in motivation for status. So he really is just chasing the approval of other people. And I realized that is not what I want. Figuring out these things is maybe not super easy, but it doesn't take a month worth of reflection. All it takes is you sitting down and clearing your calendar for a day and just have a think. What are the rules within which you want to play? And what is your largest life priority right now? And how do you build yourself into the person that you respect the most? The nice thing about this, like self-respecting, is I think it applies across almost any domain. Whether you like whatever values you hold, whatever religion you might follow, at the end of the day, your self-respect will follow whatever value system you might subscribe to. So it's a pretty nice rule of thumb, I think, can be applied almost anywhere. Having applied this, so how do we go about then doing that? Next best thing is just take action. My best suggestion on how to start is figure out where you can add the most value. So what skill set do you have that you can give the world, or what special access do you have that you can, use that other people cannot? So for example, if you come from a family that's in the accounting business or something like that, then you can go and build stuff for accountants that other people can't because you have unfair access or unfair skills. And then outside of that, you want to pick a good market, any market that has pain, money, and is growing, and that you can find, obviously. And then go and take action. Like, pick something where you think you can add the most value and go after it and see what happens. Sometimes random opportunities pop up on your plate. So for example, in my situation, I'm buying up an alcohol distributor with a friend of mine. And like, this has been a business where we realized that actually we might be able to add a lot of value to this business because of our connections in Singapore. It's not something that was on my radar before, but hey, it's an opportunity that I believe is a place that I can have an unfair advantage. And so, okay, maybe I want to play that. The important note that I want to make is that, like, you're not ever going to get more information from thinking. This is a really important idea because a lot of people try to think their way out of problems. If you have a problem and you do not have the information to solve it, and you need more information, then take action. Action will collect data, right? So when I call people and they tell me things, I'm now receiving information. But if I sit alone in this room and I think and I ruminate on things, I am not collecting any more information. And when I say take action, rarely does that mean GPT something. Don't go and ask ChatGPT to like get all the information that you want to find. Like, that is being lazy. That is not action. Research is a different category of action, right? You're basically collecting information that other people have collected, and usually, like, they're putting that information, like promotional blogs, marketing blogs, like they have a reason to put out that information, which is usually not benevolent, right? They're not doing that for fun. They're doing that for some kind of commercial incentive. And so you want to collect firsthand information as much as possible. And so when you want to collect more information, you want to collect the highest quality information. The most powerful information is going to come from that. And that is how you're then making the best decisions. I spent an afternoon cold calling some accountants about the M&A idea that I had a little while ago. And most of them said it wasn't a problem that they saw with their clients or anything like that. And I spoke to a guy who's had an accounting firm here in Lisbon for 30 years. The guy's very knowledgeable, very smart cookie. And he gave me a lot of information. And so I skipped a bunch of steps, but I got way more reliable information by going to him than, just Googling things. Because when you Google or you ChatGPT things, you're going to be looking for the information that confirms whatever your thesis is. And so usually you'll find that information, but when you try and go and sell it to the real world, that's a different story. That quickly actually invalidated this whole idea. I realized that going into this might actually not be nearly as straightforward as I imagined or thought. And that's natural with any business, but it's like, is it worth paying the price to get in this market? Basically, that's kind of the big question mark that's there now. But I have so much more information because I called people. And that's just one example of a little action. If you need clarity, take 1-2 days, figure out what you want. Once you know what you want, just go and pursue it. Action will bring you information. Some of that information might tell you you don't actually want that. Maybe you start working on your own company for the first time and you realize actually you hate the instability of it. You hate the uncertainty. You hate the ultimate responsibility. That is new information that will now help you update your goals. That's learning. That's really effectively what learning is as well. You take action and you collect information, and that information updates your behaviors. That is a learning loop. This idea is a really powerful one that I think a lot of people overlook when they're trying to figure out what to do next. And I've seen a lot of people in my immediate surroundings, and myself included, making mistakes about this shit and just trying to think their way to perfection. It's not going to fucking work, I'll tell you that much. Anyway, that being said, thank you for watching. I hope this was useful, my little rant. I'm going to go and read up on some comments now. Other than that, take care. Have a nice day.